Welcome back to Leadership In. Behind every success story are moments of uncertainty, difficult decisions, and lessons learned along the way. This week, we continue to explore those moments with the leaders shaping advertising, media, and technology today. I'm Greg McDonald.
I'm Geoff Wallenitz, and today we're thrilled to welcome Ali Manning, Chief Operating Officer at Chalice. Throughout her career, Ali has worked at some of the industry's most influential companies, including leadership roles at Google and Snap, where she helped scale teams, drive operational excellence, and navigate some of the biggest shifts in digital advertising. Today, she leverages that experience at Chalice, helping shape the future of media buying and optimization in an increasingly complex ecosystem. So let's get started. Ali, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here. So let's kick this off with our first question out of the box always. Tell us how you introduce yourself at a dinner party.
So if I'm at a dinner party, I almost always will be there with my husband, Adam. And typically we'll answer the question of what will you do? One of the two of us will say, oh, well, we co-founded a tech startup with my spouse. And we might get a second question like, what kind of tech startup? But a lot of times that's enough for people to just ask a ton of questions. They're not interested in what kind of company and what does it do. They are only interested in what is it like to work with your husband. And you're like, well, how do I answer this to someone I've met for 10 seconds? And my husband.
And also
right
with your husband sitting right there. Yeah. So how do you answer that question? Let's go to that.
I'll say the most honest I ever answered that question was Adam's younger brother asked me about it. And I just started laughing. And then I finished laughing to answer. And I just continued to laugh. I tell people it's like anything in a marriage. In a good marriage, right? You balance out what the other doesn't have or would like more of. And just like in any marriage, when that is working well, it is amazing. The chemistry's there. It's just beautiful. And when it's not working well, it is like the worst versions of yourselves. But for us, it's on display for people whose livelihoods depend on us. So we work a lot on trying to be better than our worst selves most of the time.
It's like a bed analogy, right? Like when a marriage is good, you can sleep next to each other in a twin bed. But when a marriage is bad, there's no bed big enough.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same sort of concept. Yeah.
Yeah. No
totally.
office big enough.
On behalf of everybody who's worked for a husband and wife, thank you for being kind to each other and making that effort.
Well, we try. We try. I think about it like how hard that must be to sit there and watch a husband and wife bicker over marketing materials. We don't do it that often in front of everyone, and our team handles it with a lot of grace for us. So that's nice.
You've done a number of things in your career. Can you talk a little bit about who opened the first door for you and what did they see in you that you might not have seen in yourself?
Well, I'm going to go even farther than the career. When I was, I think, 8 or 9, Duke was in the championship. And I was at a Tex-Mex restaurant with my family. And I was asking my dad questions. And I asked him, is Duke a good school? And he said, Ali, it's one of the best schools. And I said, well, I'm going to get in there. And he looked at me dead in the eye. And he said, if you can get into Duke, I'll pay full ride. And I took it as a challenge, like challenge accepted. That's what I'm going to do. And it really gave me a lot of purpose. I did get into Duke. He did have to pay most of a full ride. He did get some aid. But I feel like that was the first time someone had said, like, I'm not sure you could do this. And I was like, no, I'm definitely going to do that. And I think that's led to a lot of the persistence and drive I have even today.
That challenge accepted mentality, I think, is what drives a lot of operators. Right? What you wind up doing is handing someone a problem and saying, I bet you can't fix this. And you're like, oh yeah, I sure can. Mm-hmm. So if you follow that through line from Duke's national championship, let's say in the early 90s, through to when you started working, what were the challenges you began to take on as you moved through your career?
When I worked at Google, I had a little sticker on my laptop that said, underestimate me, that'll be fun. Underestimate me, that'll be fun. That was my mantra. As a woman, a young woman in particular, just was underestimated all the time. I started at Google as an analyst on a sales team, but they would bring me in as an analyst and the clients wouldn't know that I was also on commission. So they took my word more seriously. But I remember standing at the front of this room with marketers from JP Morgan Chase, and I was like a 25-year-old blonde female. And I start to take them through how Google search works and the ROI they could get if they did different things. And I just saw the room visibly turn to like, oh, this is someone who's serious and knows numbers and could hang out with a banker. And just wanting to do that in every room I went into became my mode of being. And it still is something I have to do today.
That's really interesting because it segues into a question we ask a lot, which is there's a lot of moments everyone has to navigate when they feel like they don't belong in the room. There's versions of that, right? Based on who you are, what you look like, things like that. So how do you navigate those moments where you feel like you don't belong in the room?
Well, I would tweak it a bit. I always feel like I belong in the room, like I've earned my right to be there, that I'm talented enough, all of those things. What I have to do is demonstrate to everyone else that I belong in the room. Like, I think I've already earned the right. And I think that's an important mindset to arrive at. What I would tell someone who is also 25 is in every meeting you can just ask a question. Ask a question that you think is hopefully a smart type of question, because that just builds your muscle of talking and engaging with executives and with substance and content. And the more you do that, the more you'll feel comfortable. So I got to Duke and I was a little intimidated, but I read something that was like, if you sit in the front row and ask questions, your grade goes one grade up. So I did that in college and it was really helpful. And I just took that right into work. It's like every time I'm at the table, I'm going to contribute something, especially questions, because asking a good question sincerely is a great way to show how smart you are and a great way to show leadership. So still ask lots of questions now of my poor team.
I hadn't heard that stat. Intuitively, that makes a lot of sense. And even there, I think it's something that a lot of people feel intimidated to ask questions. What makes a good question as you're sitting in one of those rooms?
I tend to think about what else might people also want to know or need to know about something. So like a question that'll serve not just me, but the room, if that makes sense. Or sometimes even if I feel like someone is covering content and maybe they missed something critical that they probably meant to talk about, like I'll try to ask something that'll prompt that. It's sincere curiosity. And I feel like sincere curiosity drives product innovation. It drives so much.
We talk a lot about intellectual curiosity on this podcast being so pivotal to success along the way. So that's a big piece of advice I think a lot of people give. That's certainly one that I give. So when you think about a piece of advice that you got early in your career, perhaps one that was very right, perhaps one that was surprisingly wrong, what comes to mind?
So the surprisingly wrong one. So I went through a period at Google where I'd risen up. And a lot of that was just being a go-getter who was always like, yes, how can I help? How can I make my boss look good? I'll do the project no one else wants to do because it's hard and messy. And then when I do it, it has so much value and you get promoted. But I was getting to a point where I was starting to manage people and take on more leadership. And I got a lot of coaching that eager beaver, positive Allie isn't going to be a leader at Google. Tone it down and have gravitas. Some of it was legitimate, but like they got me a voice coach to lower my register so I would sound more serious. It just made me stressed out. One woman in particular told me, an executive, that I was too smiley, that I smiled too much. So then I tried to smile less. And then the leader of my group is like, Allie, what's going on? Your bubbly, bright personality is what we value about you. It's what makes you authentic and credible. You can take some of this advice, but you can't listen to all of it. And then good advice I've gotten, I think that I haven't always heeded, especially early in my career, but put things in perspective around family and work. And it's not just balancing it, but it's reminding yourself what's important and what you really should make time for and be intentional about.
Both of those are great advice. It's funny to me how be yourself, like basically keep doing what got you here, isn't more often given as advice, to your point. Yeah. So I've gotten similar coaching around, you need to talk slower and lower your register and all of those things. And ultimately, I'm just like, guys, here I am, right?
Yeah.
I've gotten this far in my career. I'm just going to keep riding it and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, and I think too now I'm just Allie at Chalice because I'm the boss or co-boss. And I think it does really well for the company. Like, I think the sincerity, positivity, all of that, people want to show up for a leader like that.
People want to show up for a leader like that who is authentically like that, which I think is a
Yeah.
really important distinction, right? It's because you are authentically like that, which is different than trying to show up that way if you're not. It goes back to that, be
True.
yourself.
And not only that, like I'm also sarcastic and critical, and I'm leading the people who are under me and typically younger than me. And they want something different in a leader too, right? They don't want someone who's talking like the founder of Theranos and like, you know.
Let's actually pivot and put the spotlight on Chalice here to talk about the company, the ways in which you're leaders in the space, your product, your market, your people. We've got a few questions once we get in there, but why don't you set the stage for us with that?
Yeah. So Chalice, we founded it in 2020 as an AI company where we bring custom AI models for advertisers to get better results. Maybe better results is a little flat, like meaningful results for their business. So not just a better cost per click, God help us, or even a conversion rate, but overall customer lifetime value or incremental sales lift. So metrics that are harder to get if you're using tools that are built for everyone, but are really important to big companies who have complex product cycles and relationships with their consumer. So we founded in 2020, and for 2 years, just met anyone we could and tried to talk to them about the power of AI for transformation. And we kind of got people looking at us like we were aliens. And then ChatGPT came on the scene, and all of a sudden we were prophetic and smart, and our business really took off. At the core, that's still what we do. We'll work with a company on the business results that the CEO talks about in the earnings call, or at least a result that's much closer to that the CFO and a CEO would look at and say, okay, yeah, that drives the business. With the power of AI models and now agentic, that doesn't need to be a big custom lift project. So for us, we have tech that I think of as Legos. Like we built all these Legos and we can configure them for what a brand wants. Very tactically, what that means is we're acting as the algorithmic or AI-based decisioning for what ad gets in front of whom, at what price, in what context. And we do that by deploying inside of a platform that a customer already uses. If they use the Trade Desk or Meta, whomever, they could bring our models directly into that and own the decisioning in those platforms versus like those platforms making the decisions on behalf of the advertiser, which we know can get the advertiser good results, but are usually in the favor of the platform first and not really incremental to the advertiser, the brand's business.
And so the brands are really your primary client, right?
Yep.
And then you're like the intelligence engine that's really optimized specific to that brand, where at the platform level, it might be optimized to a vertical where you can optimize specific to what matters to them with technology that has been customized for their purposes.
Yeah. And it means just being able to bring in more data sets too. Platforms can't incorporate every data set into their modeling. They need to limit it in a way, right? Because their tech has to serve tens of thousands to millions of advertisers all at once, depending on how big you are. And so just being able to bring in custom data sets and model on those also drives a lot of value.
Makes sense. And then can you talk a little bit about the market? You said you started in 2020, ChatGPT came out, I think, 2022, and that was an inflection point for you. What does that look like in 2026?
Yeah, so we have product market fit finally. It's still, I think, in early adopter phase, which is hard to believe, but I think still where the whole industry is with AI. And then we've been thoughtful about being on the bleeding edge on agentic adoption and using that internally and then inside of our products. Everyone's going to be talking about agentic. It can, but people are mostly going to be talking about what it will do or what it could do. And I'm more interested in what it has done. And I still feel like that's true of AI too. You know, you still have a lot of people just kind of saying, oh, AI will, blah, blah, blah. But we've been really proud to go out the last year and a half at conferences and be like, we're going to tell you what AI has done and give some real examples. But yeah, all that is to say, I think AI still feels new to a lot of brands. There's a lot of AI washing in the industry, which is just slapping AI onto a reskinned old product. And that just becomes super confusing to the customer, right? They can kind of tell that a lot of this stuff that says it's AI isn't really, right? Or like, oh, yeah, well, it's algorithmic, so it's AI. That's kind of loosely true. But then so everyone claims that. So anyway, I think the market is still confused, definitely more confused around agentic. And so trying to not just stand out in that market, but stand out with some specificity that someone can understand and want to act is a challenge. But I think it's something we've been able to do pretty well.
For large companies that aren't necessarily as nimble as you guys, starting from a blank piece of paper can be really daunting because they have tons and tons and tons and tons of money invested in older processes, right? Even if they're slapping the veneer of AI on that. And I deal with that. I mean, and Greg does too on a day-to-day basis with companies. Like some companies are actively innovating in that space, but you guys are truly standard setter here. So from your own leadership perspective, what does it mean to you to lead inside of a company that's actually on that bleeding edge, that is standard setting in something that is very new, to your point,
Yeah.
right? Very Wild West.
So there's two things. There's the internal and the external view on that, right? So externally, we know we're a category leader on something bleeding edge or near bleeding edge, at least. We know we have to keep being ahead of the market, and it's tough. It's easier because my partner, Adam, is pretty visionary and I'm pretty, I think, great at executing on that vision or enhancing it. But we kind of have to constantly be going to market and saying, what's new about this? How's it going to add value? And then internally, our head of product will see something we posted on a LinkedIn and he's like, this is fun. And we'll be like, yeah, we're building that, right? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, we're building that. You know, Rob went from client services person to head of solutions architecture to now he leads product. We have to push them, right? To be like, we're building product A and now we're building product B as an extension of A or as part of A because we're running ahead, you know? And the team will be like, but nobody's ever done that before. And we're like, right, that's why we have a company that's new and hot. That's what a startup is. So it's a delicate balance.
Well, there's a tension there, right? Between the resources you have to invest in something and how fast you want to sprint at something and what it means to make a kind of a productive or an unproductive decision, right?
Yeah, for sure. We always tell the team the actual customer who's showing up for this product isn't showing up for 9 months anyway, right? Like you got to get the message out now. We get excited about the ideas for where things need to go and we talk about them. And that's how we stay ahead. And then we make sure the team's aligned on building it.
How much are you leading the market in the way you just described, to use a good Canadian analogy, skating where the puck is going to be, versus responding to clients? Like, where do your clients sit on all of this as well? Because I've got to think some of them at least are pretty sophisticated and are coming to you with things that you haven't built yet or haven't thought about. Is that happening too?
Almost all of our biggest clients are clients who didn't even really sit through a sales pitch. Like they had heard of us or knew us or got 3 slides in the sales pitch and were like, no, wait, let me just tell you what I want. I have a feeling you guys could do this thing for Hershey's. It's like driving more candy sales sell through, they call it, putting ads where candy sales is falling behind. With one of our big financial services customers, it was, we want incremental lifetime value, the way we measure it internally. So we have these customers who are on the bleeding edge themselves, either in reality or even just in thinking about what they want to do. And then we get to be a partner that helps enable that. Those were our best early customers because we were building, and we still are building the product all the time, but like we were really building the foundation of the product. And to so have those customers there, they pushed us into building a much more robust and durable product. We also have customers who my sales team meets them at Brand Innovators. They love what they heard of like one of us on a panel. I just have my whatever ROI metric. We'll implement for them too. And we almost always see really great results for that stuff as well, just because there's more specific data being modeled on. So it's usually more data, better prediction, better results. we've had to get comfortable kind of accepting clients who don't want to do something fancy, who just want more of whatever crack they've been addicted to. What I have to do is promise Adam, this is the gateway drug for them. They'll get more versions and then they'll get really interested in LTV. You have to meet the customer where they're at. And we're at the point now where we're scaling enough that we can't only be working with the top 10%, because at some point you have worked with them all or all that you're going to be working with at the moment, kind of thing.
And part of that growth is really building the trust. Many organizations don't want to be the leader. They want to be in the top cohort, but not necessarily the first one across the finish line, if you will. So it's doing them a service also to be able to meet them where they are and to be able to have all the case studies in the background that can support their internal navigation too. What's a leadership decision you've made recently that you think might surprise people outside the company?
Recently, we looked at the 2026 election cycle. We've done really well in the political vertical before. We took a look at it and we're like, we can't staff this with our current sales team, or we could, but the opportunity cost of doing that is kind of high. And if we don't have really dedicated talent to it, we'll probably miss a lot of opportunities. And so I was talking to my political advisor and we were like, what are we going to do? And I was like, oh my God, my sister got Chalice our first client ever, which was the Biden campaign. She got us our second client, which was John Ossoff's campaign. And she did that all just because she was supporting her big sister who was starting a company. So she works in the political sphere. And I was just like, we should just hire Holly. When we hire people, both full-time employees and consultants, I'm always trying to be precious about it being a fair and open process. But in this case, I was like, she's talented. She's proven. I trust her. She can jump into this because she's consulting right now. So anyway, I feel like I've been thinking a lot about hiring friends and family and how that looks from the outside to a lot of people. When a founder does that, it looks like just favoritism. But I feel like there's also a real expediency and trust you need in startups sometimes, that it makes sense to hire someone you know. So anyway, my sister's doing political for us on a part-time basis. We hired our friend Marley to do slide decks for us initially. Now she's the head of marketing. And so we have friends and family working for the company. I saw one of the founders I worked for before doing that, and just everyone felt critical of it and like a microscope on anyone who they knew was hired that way. But now I kind of would defend it. So
I mean, I think it makes sense, and not just for a small company, right? Like, there's times in a large company where you absolutely have to run a fair process. And there's times where you're like, I need somebody who understands all the skeletons in the closet and everything they're signing up for here because we have a short timeline, to your point. Political, I think, is a perfect example of this because it's so narrow in time frame for sort of the maximum opportunity that you need huge coverage for a really short period of time. And it's very specialized. And especially when it's a startup, the stakes are even higher in most cases. And the reality is that you're fully invested in this. You wouldn't do that if you thought it wasn't great for the business.
It's the trust thing too. This goes back to the allocation of resources conversation from a little while ago. If you're allocating resources in a certain place, you want to make sure that the bet you're making is one that is going to pay off, right? Not all of them pay off, but in that case it is. I'll actually shift into a question that I think we're sort of dancing around here, which is one of my favorite ones to talk about in this podcast, which is the notion of performance versus humanity and how you balance those things in terms of how you manage, by the way, especially a sales team. So as you think about that as a leader across your career and now, where you're not just leading, you're founding, how do you balance performance, humanity in your decision-making?
yeah, it's a tough one. Well, some things are not tough. Like, I don't think it's tough to look at every person on my team as a full human being who has family, friends, a life outside of Chalice. And that's why they're working. Their life is not for Chalice. They don't have all of their future and past wealth invested like I do, right? And even me, who does have that, my kids still take priority over almost everything. Last week was field day, which for some reason is the most important day of the year to my kids.
I don't know why, but yes, I
Yeah.
understand.
And I was invited to a client event that we would all say is important, and they really wanted me because of like female and leader, whatever. But I was like, I can't go, you know? And I'm really glad I didn't because field day was magical. And my kids were so happy that both Adam and I were there. But it was a tough decision. So I have to look at that for employees too, right? Our head of sales is expecting a baby in mid-July. And he's like, yeah, well, at Cannes, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you're not going to Cannes. And he's like, no, my wife wants me to go. I was like, I'm not going to be responsible for you missing the birth of your first or any child because of Cannes. Like, come on, anyway. So you have to look at them as a full human. At the same time, they need to be productive and contributing as much to the team as the whole group is doing. Almost everyone is an A plus player, and A players want to be on a team with other A players. So anyway, I try to treat everyone as a full human being with lots of different skills. And then sometimes it just doesn't align. Sometimes we don't have the right role that matches the person's talent, and neither of us really understood that going in. And so then we try to be really honest and compassionate about that and try to act expeditiously when that's happening, because that's what's really best for everyone. Those are tough.
You talked a little bit about advice that you got at the start of your career. Is there a piece of advice that you give often now?
Different pieces of advice for different people. I would say to people who are young in their career and want to climb, I say, go find out what is going to get your boss promoted, and that's going to be the best for you. Or even, maybe it's not even what your boss, but like, go find what's going to add value to the organization that someone doesn't already see, but it's going to add a lot of value. Because if you can do that, that's where careers start to soar. And then I do kind of like mentoring calls with other women who are mid-career, early family life. And for them, I say, find or create a job for yourself where you have the most control over your own time. I didn't realize it, but that's one of the great things about founding a company, including with your husband, is you get a lot of control over how your time flows.
What excites you most about the future of your part of the industry?
I'm really curious to see if the puck is going where we think it is. We think that more and more brands are going to wake up to having been kind of played by the big platforms. I recently posted an article about this, right? Comes in to the CFO, CEO's office, and they're like, look, marketing drove sales up, 32% last year. And the CFO and the CEO are looking and they're like, but total sales went up 5%. How can marketing say they went up 32, right? And so there's this kind of attribution and credit taking game that happens. So these platforms are taking more credit than due for the sales they're driving or their impact they're having. And we think that is already at a reckoning in some organizations and will continue to be. And that'll have brands really demanding what we're building, right? Which is technology that can be really custom for you or you can own. I'm interested to see if the overall market really shifts because we're capturing the leading part of that market. But I'm curious to see if it really does shift that way. I think it will. That's obvious. We're making a big bet on that. We'll see.
I have made it no secret that I think big technology platforms are taking an outsized amount of flesh for the role that they play in many of these things. Part of what you're doing is a margin play, right? It's not just how are you increasing conversions or whatever the actual lifetime value cycle looks like. It's also how are you increasing the margin around that too, because you're more efficient to
for
lifetime.
sure. Like the whole point of advertising is to influence people's actions. So if you're just collecting the people who are going to buy that product anyway, or taking credit for those who saw your ad first on television and then search for it later, like if you take all the credit for it, it's going to be lopsided and sales will slow and people might not understand why, but some are understanding. Like if I give all of my money to two platforms, which do have a lot of attention and do have a lot of influence, but are they the only attention and influence in the whole economy? No, but are they getting 80% or more of advertiser budgets? A lot of times, yes.
You just talked about the future of the industry and what you want Chalice's legacy to be as part of that. When you think about your own legacy, not your job title, but the actual impact, like what do you hope your legacy is?
Well, I didn't really understand this conceptually, but having created wealth and jobs is actually really amazing thing. Like every offsite we have now, I'll have a new employee come up to me and talk to me about how meaningful the job is for them and or their family. And that's amazing just to have created now 50 plus jobs and created something new for the economy. And so, if I were to leave with anything like that, it'd be that as a big thing. But then jobs people actually enjoy and find meaning from, that's amazing too. I've had employees tell me, I finally feel like I can be who I am at work, or I finally feel like I'm part of something. I don't like it when people say, we're all a family. I think that starts to be cultish. We aren't all a family. But to have people feel like I can be my real self, my ideas are valued, that all just feels incredible to me. And so being able to do that at Chalice, and then if any of that bleeds over to the broader ecosystem, that's great. I talk a lot about being a woman founder, woman executive, and being able to just help other women rise up is valuable to me. I had a lot of women, like the one telling me not to smile. I've had other women who are more senior cut me down or badmouth me and got me on the layoff list. I don't want to be that kind of leader, especially with women. I want to be someone who lifts everyone up, but especially women. And a lot of that is just making people more aware of what it is like to be a woman who gets underestimated every time she steps into the room to talk about data until she opens her mouth.
Underestimate you. That'll be fun.
And
Yeah.
I need a shirt for that.
Yeah, you got to make a shirt. This was wonderful. Allie, thank you so much. Really
Thank you both.
awesome
Yeah,
conversation.
thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Leadership In is hosted and produced by Geoff Wallenetz and Greg McDonald. Special thanks to Jess DeWeese for production support. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show on your favorite podcast app, subscribe to our newsletter at leadershipinpodcast.com, or find us now on YouTube at Leadership In.